"What the hell do you think you're doing here, Maya?" Jordan Hale's voice cut across the cornfield. He hadn't been back here in 4 years. Now, as the new owner, he expected overgrown land, not ghosts. Certainly not her. Maya Williams stood in the rows of corn, clad in an olive work dress streaked with dirt and sweat. A straw hat shaded most of her face, but not her poise. Her hands were deep in the earth. Her back straightened slowly at the sound of his voice, as if she had expected it, as if she'd been waiting for it. "This isn't squatting," she said plainly. "I've been working this land for over 2 years. "Working it?" Jordan snapped, stopping a few feet from her. "This ranch is private property. My company owns every inch of it, including the soil you're standing on. And don't tell me those are your kids over there." He jerked his chin toward the wooden crate under the old sycamore tree, where 3 small children sat side by side, shells of corn in their hands, feet dusty and bare. 2 girls and a boy, each with the same storm-gray eyes that stared out of Jordan Hale's reflection every morning. He didn't realize he had stopped breathing. Maya turned to glance at the children. They were already looking at him, wide-eyed, watching. Still, she bent to grab a bucket, but as she did, a folded envelope slipped from her apron, landing near her feet in the dirt. Before she could reach for it, Jordan stormed forward, voice rising. "Is this your idea of a stunt? You disappear for years and then show up on my land with 3 kids who look like me?" She stepped back instinctively. "Don't come closer, Jordan." But he already had. His dress shoes sank into the soft dirt. Maya shifted to avoid him, and that's when her foot slid on the edge of an old irrigation ditch. She lost balance. With a startled gasp, Maya fell backward into the shallow mud pit, her body hitting with a loud splash. Her dress soaked instantly. Her braid dragged through the wet soil. The envelope lay half buried beside her hand. For a second, everything froze. Then 3 pairs of tiny feet scrambled toward her. The 2 girls leapt from the crate first, giggling turning into concern. The boy followed, holding a small rag he'd been using to clean corn. All 3 reached out their small hands on her arms, shoulders, even her cheek. "Mommy okay?" asked one of the girls. Her eyes were wide, shimmering steel. Gray. The exact shade of Jordan's. The other girl, her twin, whispered, "Careful, Mommy," while patting her shoulder gently. The boy said nothing, just handed her the dirty rag, as if it were a bandage, something holy. Jordan stood there, frozen, staring into the eyes of his own past. Those eyes, his mother's eyes, passed down to him, once called rare and stormborn, by strangers were now looking back at him from the faces of 3 small children, all under 4 years old. All his. He staggered back a step. That's not possible." Maya slowly sat up, mud caked to her arms and legs. The children huddled close to her, forming a little wall of limbs and loyalty. "They're mine," she said simply, brushing her wet hair from her face. "That's all you need to know." "No," Jordan said, voice cracking. "No, they look exactly like those eyes, Maya. They're yours," she said flatly. "All 3 of them." The air shifted. The heat of the Arizona sun gave way to a heavier weight truth, undeniable and cold, like the shadow of a storm. Jordan blinked at the children. One of the twins, Grace, looked directly at him, then whispered, "Are you Daddy?" The word punched the breath out of his lungs. He swayed, jaw slack, heart roaring in his ears. "You knew," he said to Maya, eyes narrowing. "You knew you were pregnant when I left." "I didn't," she replied softly. "Not that day." A memory flickered in her eyes the day he drove off, bags packed, ambition burning in his chest. She had stood on the porch barefoot, holding back tears, one hand on her belly. He never looked back. "But when I found out," she continued, "your number was disconnected. Your lawyer sent me divorce papers. There was no return address, no explanation, just signatures." Jordan ran a hand through his hair. "You should have told me. You should have stayed," she shot back. He glanced down again at the envelope, still lying half buried in the mud. "What is that?" Maya picked it up and clutched it tight. "The letter you never sent. I found it in the pocket of your old coat, months after you were gone." He looked at her, dacid. "You kept it?" "I kept it," she said, "to remind myself of everything I survived without you." He opened his mouth, but nothing came. The boy Samuel tugged at her sleeve, his gaze fixed on Jordan. Then, in a small, careful voice, he asked, "Is he mad?" No, baby, Maya murmured, brushing a kiss onto his forehead. He's just surprised. Boo. Jordan stepped forward, now more hesitantly, eyes drawn to the children as if they were fire. Grace, still clutching her mother's arm, reached toward him. Her fingers curled around his pinky. Her grip was tiny, but strong. He felt something break in his chest, an old dam built from pride, ambition, and excuses. I didn't come here for this, he said, voice rough. No, Maya replied, still seated in the mud. You came here to see what money could buy. But now you've seen something it can't. Jordan looked at her, then at the three children. They were staring at him, unafraid, not asking for anything, just being. I don't deserve them, he whispered. No, she said. But they do. And in that moment, Jordan Hale, billionaire, titan of industry, a man who had conquered skylines and silenced boardrooms, stood speechless in a muddy field, staring into the eyes of a life he didn't even know he'd left behind. Jordan Hale didn't remember walking back to his truck. His feet carried him through the corn rows like a sleepwalker, each step heavy with the weight of everything he had just seen. Behind him, Maya's voice drifted faintly through the air as she guided the children inside the small farmhouse. They laughed actual, unguarded laughter, as if the mud, the shouting, and the stranger staring at them had never happened. But for Jordan, everything had changed. He sat behind the wheel of his black Range Rover, engine idling, hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly that the leather creaked. His mind kept replaying the same image, Grace's small fingers wrapping around his, her soft voice asking, "Are you Daddy?" He could still feel her touch. He leaned forward and rested his forehead against the wheel. For years, he'd trained himself to stay composed in meetings with billion-dollar consequences. He could smile through betrayal, bluff through negotiations, and walk away from partnerships with no more than a nod. But this moment, this unexpected truth, had cracked something deeper than any failed deal. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows over the field. Jordan finally shifted the gear into drive, but instead of heading toward the highway, he turned toward the town. There was a motel a few miles down the Driftwood Inn run by an old couple who probably hadn't changed the carpet since the 82nds, but it was the only place close enough to give him time to think. He pulled into the gravel lot, shut the engine off, and stared through the windshield. It was a small building with chipped paint and dusty windows. A faded American flag hung beside the door. Jordan took a deep breath, then stepped out. Inside, the scent of lemon cleaner and old furniture greeted him. Mrs. Abernathy, the owner, looked up from behind the counter. Her eyes widened slightly when she recognized him. "Well, look what the wind blew back," she said with a knowing smile. "Ain't seen you since you wore sneakers and thought chewing tobacco was cool." Jordan managed a dry chuckle. "I'll take a room, just a night." Mrs. Abernathy narrowed her eyes, her smile softening. "Rough day? You have no idea." Ugh. She handed him the key without asking more. Jordan appreciated that. The older folks in town had a gift for silence that spoke volumes. Room 3B hadn't changed. The wallpaper still curled at the edges. The air conditioner rattled like an old man snoring. But it was quiet. And Jordan needed quiet. He sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out his phone. His screen lit up with emails, missed calls, texts from board members. A reminder to approve a marketing rollout for the Vegas project. He stared at it for a while, then turned it over and set it aside. Instead, he pulled out his wallet and took out an old photo creases along the edges. Colors fading. It was him and Maya on the porch of her grandmother's house. He was wearing overalls, laughing like a fool. Maya was barefoot, holding a jar of sweet tea and giving him the look she always gave when she was pretending not to love him too much. God, she had loved him, and he had walked away. No, it wasn't even walking, it was disappearing. One minute he was there. The next he was chasing investors across cities, drafting contracts, smiling for press photos, and pretending he hadn't left his soul behind on a porch in Arizona. He thought he had time to build, time to return, time to explain, but time didn't wait. It just quietly handed Maya 3 children and let him miss everything. His chest tightened. He didn't even know their names. Not really. He only heard Grace's voice. And that boy Samuel, she had called him? Not his by blood, but clearly his by choice. And the other twin? Ellie? Maybe? He rubbed his face, then stood abruptly. The motel bed creaked behind him. He paced the room once, twice, then stopped at the window. The lights of the farm were still visible in the far distance, dim golden glows against the horizon. He had to go back. Not tomorrow. Tonight. He grabbed his keys and left without a word. When he returned to the farm, the sky had shifted to deep blue. Crickets chirped in the grass. The porch light was on, casting a warm circle around the front door. He didn't knock. He stood at the edge of the fence, his hands in his pockets, and waited. The screen door creaked open. Maya stepped out, holding a chipped coffee mug, a towel wrapped around her wet hair. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "I know." "Then why are you?" Jordan looked down at the dirt between them. "Because you didn't lie." "And I did. I told myself this place didn't matter anymore. That you didn't matter. That I could just build a life on top of a broken one." Maya didn't speak. "I was wrong," he said. Still silence. "I want to know them," he continued. "Not because of guilt or blood, but because when that little girl held my hand, I remembered what it felt like to be human again." Maya stepped off the porch, walking slowly until she stood in front of him. "I've built a world without you, Jordan," she said, voice steady. "Brick by brick, bath by bath. I've scraped mud out of shoes and prayed through fevers. I've buried pride so deep I forgot what it smelled like. So if you want a place in that world, don't just show up and talk." "What do I do then?" he asked. She took a sip of coffee. "Start by listening." And with that, she handed him the mug and turned back inside. Jordan stood in the warm circle of porch light, holding her mug, vanilla, cinnamon, something comforting, and for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like a billionaire. He felt like a man on the edge of home. If you felt Jordan's struggle, hit like, and tell us where you're watching from. Maybe someone nearby is watching this story with you right now. Jordan stood on the porch for a long time after Maya had gone inside, the chipped mug still warm in his hands. The scent of cinnamon clung to the rim, a familiar comfort that unlocked more than just taste. It pulled loose fragments of the life he'd once had here. A quieter life, a smaller life, a life that had, without his knowing, been more real than anything he'd built with glass towers and zeros. He finally stepped down from the porch and sat on the top stair, letting the cool air settle over him. A cicada buzzed lazily from the tree. Somewhere in the distance, a cow mooed in complaint. The kind of background music that didn't come from playlists or city speakers, but from the land itself. The screen door creaked again, and Jordan turned just in time to see a pair of small bare feet stepping cautiously onto the wood. It was Grace. She clutched a tattered blanket in one hand and rubbed her eye with the other, her curls bouncing slightly with each step. "I couldn't sleep," she whispered, voice hoarse with sleep. Jordan opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. He hadn't prepared for this small, quiet version of fatherhood. Grace shuffled toward him, dragging her blanket, and plopped down beside him without invitation. "I heard yelling today," she said, staring out into the dark field. "Were you mad at Mommy?" He looked down at her, those same storm-gray eyes staring at the world, steady and quiet, just like his mother's. "I was confused," he answered truthfully. "And afraid." Grace tilted her head. "Afraid of what?" He hesitated. "Of how much I've already missed." She leaned her shoulder against his arm. "You still have time. That's what Mommy says when I mess up with the chickens." Jordan smiled, though his throat tightened. "That's good advice." They sat in silence for a moment. "She named me Grace," the little girl continued, "because she said something really hard gave her something really soft. Is that true?" "Yeah," he said softly. "That's true." Inside the house, footsteps approached. The screen door opened again, and Maya appeared, Samuel in her arms and Ellie trailing behind her, thumb in her mouth. "I figured they'd follow the light," she said, gently settling Samuel down next to Grace. The little boy rubbed his eyes, blinked at Jordan, then scooted closer to his sister. Ellie hesitated, glancing at Jordan. Her curls stuck out in messy tufts, her pajama shirt slightly backward. Maya bent down and whispered something in her ear. Ellie nodded and walked carefully over to Jordan, then plopped onto his other side without a word, leaning into his arm. Just like that, he was surrounded. 3 little bodies curled up against him, warm, trusting. He froze not from fear, but from the sheer weight of it all. It was more than he'd ever carried in any boardroom. Maya sat on the porch steps a few feet away, hands clasped between her knees. "They don't know," she said quietly. "Not the full story. I haven't spoken your name in this house. I never wanted your shadow to raise them." Jordan swallowed. "I understand. But they've always asked," she added, looking out into the darkness. "Who they look like, why their eyes are different from mine. I told them they were born in a storm. A special kind. The kind that leaves behind good things." "I was the storm," he said. Maya met his gaze. "And you left wreckage." "Maya." A silence stretched between them, not angry this time, but dense with truth. Jordan looked down at the children. Grace had already dozed off, head on his leg. Ellie hummed softly, playing with the edge of his sleeve. Samuel watched him carefully, his gaze serious. "I don't want to just explain who I was," Jordan finally said. "I want to show them who I can be." Maya didn't respond right away. She pulled her cardigan tighter around her shoulders and leaned back against the porch rail. "You want a second chance," she said. He nodded. "It doesn't start with apologies," she continued. "It starts with action, real ones. This ranch doesn't run on sentiment. It runs on hands and sweat and showing up." "I can show up," he said. She looked at him, truly looked, studying his pressed slacks, the watch on his wrist, the way his body stiffened when the kids shifted their weight on his lap. She raised an eyebrow. "You willing to ruin that fancy shirt for a chicken coop at 6 a.m.? If that's what it takes." She exhaled, and for the first time, her face softened, not forgiveness, not yet, but the crack of possibility. "We start tomorrow," she said. "No promises, no expectations, just sweat," he said with a half smile. "And silence," she added. "You're not here to lead anything. You're here to learn." "I can do that," he said. Maya stood and opened the screen door. "Bring the kids in when they fall asleep. There's a blanket on the couch." Jordan nodded as she disappeared inside. The night air was cooler now. Crickets sang in chorus. The scent of earth rose from the fields, wet, real, grounding. He looked down at the children curled beside him, breathing slow and deep. He didn't know how to braid hair, or patch a scraped knee, or chase away monsters from closets, but he would learn. He would be there when they woke up. For now, that was enough. The rooster crowed at 5:14 a.m. sharp, as if it had a grudge against sleep. Jordan Hale groaned from the couch, the thin blanket tangled around his legs, his expensive wristwatch digging into his temple from where he'd fallen sideways on a throw pillow. His back protested as he sat up, and for a moment, he blinked at the ceiling, wondering why he wasn't in a hotel suite with blackout curtains and room service. Then he heard it, the soft scurry of little feet, the creak of an old door, and a child's giggle. And just like that, he remembered. He swung his legs off the couch. The hardwood floor was colder than expected. His dress shirt from yesterday, now wrinkled and slightly crusted with drying mud, hung on a nearby chair. He grabbed it anyway and pulled it on, rolling up the sleeves. When he opened the front door, the cool morning air slapped him awake. The yard was already alive. Maya stood near the old coop in a flannel shirt and jeans, her hair pulled into a loose braid, one hand holding a coil of chicken wire, the other resting on her hip. Ellie and Grace danced barefoot around her, wearing matching overalls and rubber boots too big for them. Samuel sat quietly on an overturned bucket, holding a small bowl of feed. Jordan stepped out onto the porch, rubbing his neck. "You weren't kidding about the chickens," he muttered. Maya looked over, eyes half amused. "You thought I was being poetic? I thought you were bluffing." "Well," she said, tossing him a pair of work gloves. "Welcome to Riverbend. Breakfast works better when it doesn't run away." He fumbled the gloves but caught them. She motioned toward the coop. "The sidewall's coming loose. We need to reinforce the base. That wire won't hold through another monsoon." Jordan walked over, eyeing the lopsided wooden frame. "It looks like it survived a war." It has," Maya said, crouching beside the frame. "Just not the kind you think." She handed him a hammer and a small bag of nails. He knelt beside her, careful not to crush the hens pecking nearby. Samuel watched them both closely. "You good with tools?" she asked, not looking at him. "I own a construction company," he replied. "That's not what I asked." He sighed. I haven't swung a hammer since, I don't know, college maybe. Well, today's a good day to remember. Do. They worked in silence for a while. The morning sun broke over the horizon, painting everything in a soft golden hue. Ellie ran after a chicken, shouting something about it, stealing her dreams, while Grace pretended to direct traffic with a stick. Samuel, still seated on his bucket, drew circles in the dirt with his finger. Jordan hammered a nail, missed, and cursed under his breath. Maya looked up. You okay? He glanced at his thumb. I'm bleeding dignity. She almost smiled. You know, he said more quietly now, I thought about this place a lot. After I left. Really? Yeah, but always from a distance. Like it was a photograph I didn't deserve to keep. She didn't respond. Her hands kept moving, cutting, pulling, shaping wire. I didn't leave because I stopped loving you, he said. She paused for half a breath. No, she said softly. You left because you loved success more. Jordan lowered his eyes. I thought if I could just build something big enough, it would mean something, that it would prove something. To who? Maya asked. I don't even know anymore. Another silence. Then Samuel stood and walked over, extending the small bowl of feed. Here, he said to Jordan. Jordan looked at him, unsure. For me? The boy nodded. Jordan accepted it and watched as Samuel sat down again, satisfied. He watches everything, Maya said, her voice tender. Doesn't say much, but when he does, it means something. I can see that. Grace and Ellie joined them again, both a little dirtier, both beaming. Daddy helped fix the house, Ellie declared. Maya's eyes flicked up sharply. Jordan's breath caught. I mean, the chicken house, Grace added, slightly embarrassed. But no one corrected them. Not Maya. Not Jordan. He reached down and ruffled Grace's curls. She giggled and leaned into his side. We should wash up, Maya finally said. Breakfast not far. Jordan stood, brushing off dirt. What's on the menu? Grits, bacon, maybe some cornbread if the oven cooperates. His stomach growled audibly. Maya smirked. As they walked back to the house, Jordan lingered behind, watching the kids skip ahead. Their laughter floated like music, their shadows dancing across the yard. Then something near the porch caught his eye, a small wind chime, rusted, barely moving. He remembered it. He had bought it at a roadside fair during their first summer together. Maya had teased him for picking the ugliest one. It's not ugly, he'd said. It just needs the right wind. Now, years later, it still hung there. Not pretty, not polished, but still singing. He touched it lightly with his finger. It jingled a soft, broken sound, but it was music nonetheless. He turned to follow the others, heart heavier, but anchored. Today, he had earned something. Not forgiveness, not yet, but a place at the table. The smell of bacon crisping in cast iron hit Jordan before he even stepped through the doorway. His stomach growled again, louder this time, and one of the kids, Grace, maybe Ellie, snickered as she ran barefoot across the wooden floor. The kitchen was smaller than he remembered, or maybe he had just grown too used to oversized marble islands and polished chrome. Here, the counters were wood, the cabinets were chipped, and the fridge still had magnets from the local fair. And yet, it felt more like a home than any penthouse he'd ever lived in. Maya stood at the stove, flipping bacon with a quiet rhythm, her braid now looped into a messy bun. A line of flour stretched across her forearm where she'd wiped her hands. She didn't look up when Jordan entered. She didn't have to. She knew he was there. The kids were already gathered around a small table. Samuel sat perfectly still, waiting for the food like he'd been raised in a church. Ellie hummed to herself, drumming on the table with a wooden spoon. Grace, as usual, stared right at Jordan like she could see into his thoughts. He gave her a crooked smile. She didn't return it, just tilted her head, as if weighing him. Jordan took a seat at the end of the table. The wood creaked beneath him. The chair had a slight wobble. Need me to fix this too? He said, tapping the leg. Maya didn't turn. You fixin' things now? Starting slow. Furniture seems less complicated than people. Only just, she muttered. The kids laughed, though they didn't really get the joke. It didn't matter. When the food was finally served, Jordan waited. He noticed the kids each close their eyes briefly before eating. Not a full prayer. Just a pause. Like a breath before the dive. Maya didn't sit. She leaned against the counter, sipping her coffee, watching. I used to hate breakfast, Jordan said suddenly, halfway through his grits. Too slow. I thought mornings were for meetings, not meals. Maya raised an eyebrow. Guess you missed the memo on growing boys. He chuckled, surprised by the sound of it. Guess I did. After the meal, the kids ran outside to chase the hens, Ellie claiming she could talk to them in chicken language, which involved a lot of flapping and squawking. Jordan stayed behind, helping clear plates. Maya handed him a dish rag and didn't correct him when he loaded the cups upside down on the rack. Then, without a word, she walked over to the drawer beside the sink and pulled something out. The letter, that old folded envelope with his name on it in her script, corners worn soft with time. She handed it to him. I found it 2 months after you left, she said, in the pocket of your work coat. I almost burned it. Jordan took it with both hands. Why didn't you? I wasn't ready to erase you, she answered. Not yet. He sat down at the table, carefully unfolding the letter. The paper was thin and faintly stained. The ink had bled slightly from time or tears. Or both. His own handwriting stared back at him. Maya, if you're reading this, it means I didn't have the courage to say this out loud. I'm scared. I'm scared that I'm chasing something that might not be worth losing you for, but I also know I can't stop chasing it. Not now, not when the offers are real, and the doors are opening. I keep telling myself I'll come back, that this isn't goodbye, that when I've made it, you'll understand. But I don't even understand. I love you. I just don't know if that's enough anymore. Jay. Jordan exhaled, slow and heavy. He ran a finger down the edge of the page, then looked up. I don't even remember writing this. I do, Maya said. I remember every word you didn't say before you left. And a star. He folded the letter again, gently this time, as if it were fragile. I should have stayed. She nodded once. But you didn't. He looked at her. Do they know about this? The letter? The truth? No, she said. They just know you're someone they don't have yet. Jordan sat back. Can I tell them? Maybe, when you earn that right. Outside, the children's laughter drifted in through the open window, light and free. Jordan stared at the letter again, then tucked it into his back pocket. Not as evidence, not as guilt, but as reminder. Maya took a deep breath and walked toward the back door. You want to help? You can start with the well pump. It's been acting up since spring. Show me. They walked out into the light together, side by side. Not close yet, but closer than yesterday. As Jordan reached for the toolbox by the porch, Grace's voice rang out. Dad. I mean, Mr. Jordan. The chicken stole Ellie's sock again. He laughed, loud and honest. Then I guess we better catch him. Maya paused, hand on the railing. She didn't smile, but she didn't stop him either. The pump groaned like a dying animal. Jordan crouched beside it, sleeves rolled up, knees in the gravel, hands smeared with rust and grease. He had been at it for the better part of an hour, following Maya's instructions, then deviating from them, then quietly returning to her way without saying a word. The well hadn't given water in 3 days. According to Maya, it needed a new seal and a little faith. Jordan wasn't sure which was harder to come by. You're twisting it too hard, Maya called from behind him, leaning on a fence post with her arms crossed. I know what I'm doing, Jordan grunted. You really don't. He looked over his shoulder. You ever consider that micromanaging might be what scared the water off? She raised an eyebrow. Funny. I don't remember hiring you for your sense of humor. Ah. He turned back to the pump, trying again. Nothing. The handle squealed in protest, then stuck. He cursed under his breath. Behind him, Maya sighed and walked over. Here, she said, kneeling beside him. She brushed his hand aside not unkindly and repositioned the valve. You have to coax it, she said, not force it. This thing responds more to patience than pressure. Jordan watched her hands. They were calloused in a way he'd never noticed before, rough from labor, nails trimmed short, dirt embedded in the fine lines. They were hands that had carried babies, built fences, and scrubbed floors. Hands that had survived without him. Is that how you see everything? He asked. Even people? Maya paused, eyes on the pump. Some things break when pushed too hard. Others shut down. A loud creak broke the moment, then a sudden sputter. Water gurgled up through the pipe and spilled into the waiting bucket, cold and clear. Maya smiled, not at him, not even at the water, just to herself. Then she stood and wiped her hands on the towel slung over her shoulder. "You're welcome," she said, already walking away. Jordan stood, watching the bucket fill. The sound of rushing water used to mean something different to him. Supply lines, irrigation contracts, environmental reports. But here, it was just water. Cold, real, life-giving. He picked up the bucket and followed her. Back at the house, the kids had gathered on the porch. Grace was attempting to braid Ellie's curls, which looked more like tangled knots than anything artistic. Samuel sat cross-legged with a book in his lap, the little engine that could, whispering the lines under his breath. "I think I can. I think I can. I know I can." Jordan set the bucket down near the porch steps. "Good news," he said. "The pump works." Ellie cheered. Grace clapped. Samuel didn't look up but smiled faintly, turning the page. Maya came out with a rag and handed it to him. "You've got grease on your face. And probably in your soul." He smirked, wiping his cheek. "It'll take more than a rag for that." "Yeah," she said. "I know." Jordan leaned against the porch railing. "When did they start reading?" "Samuel first," she said. "He picks up everything, even when no one's teaching him. Ellie's more into pictures. Grace wants to be the one reading, even if she doesn't know all the words. They're smart. They're survivors." Jordan was quiet for a moment. "Do they know about me? At all?" Maya shook her head. "They know a man left. That's all." He swallowed. "I'd like to change that. You can't just swap absence for presence like flipping a switch." "I'm not flipping anything. I'm staying." "That's a decision you make every day," she said. "Not just once." The front screen door creaked open. Grace peeked out, eyes wide. "Mommy." Ellie put jelly beans in the chicken feeder again. Maya groaned. "Of course she did." She turned to Jordan. "You wanted to help. Now's your moment." He raised an eyebrow. "Chicken discipline?" "Chickens don't eat candy," Maya said. "But try telling that to a 3-year-old with a secret stash." Jordan headed toward the coop with a mock salute. On it, he found Ellie crouched beside the feeder, her tiny hand full of purple and red jelly beans. She looked up at him, caught in the act, but grinned wide. "They like it," she insisted. "They also like pecking their own poop. Doesn't mean it's a good idea," he said. She blinked. "What's poop?" He paused. "Ask your mother." He gently scooped the candy out of the feeder and replaced it with grain from the nearby sack. Ellie sulked beside him. "Will they forgive me?" she asked. He looked at her, serious now. "Chickens forget fast. People, a little slower." "Die. Did Mommy forgive you?" The question dropped like a stone in his chest. "I don't know," he said honestly, "but I'm trying." Ellie studied him, then nodded solemnly. "Okay, but no more yelling. I'll work on that." They walked back together, her hand in his, small, confident. Maya was on the porch, watching them. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. Later that evening, after dinner, Maya brought out the old photo album. She didn't say why. She just placed it on the table, then walked away. Jordan opened the cover. There they were, his younger self, shirtless and sunburnt, holding Maya's hand during their first harvest. A blurry photo of them laughing beside a busted pickup. A close-up of Maya holding a baby chick, eyes squinting in the sunday. And then blank pages. Years of silence laid bare in paper. Jordan closed the album and ran his hand over the cover. He wasn't in the blank pages, but maybe, just maybe, he could fill the next ones. The next morning brought rain. Not a downpour, just a soft, steady drizzle that coated everything in silver. The fields shimmered under the low gray sky, and the scent of wet earth drifted through the windows like a memory. Jordan stood at the sink, rinsing mugs from breakfast. He had offered to help again, and this time Maya didn't argue. She'd simply handed him a towel and turned back to the stove, quietly measuring flour for cornbread. The kids were sprawled on the living room floor, a tangle of blocks and crayons. Grace was trying to draw a cow. Samuel was arranging alphabet magnets into patterns only he understood, and Ellie was humming to herself, completely lost in whatever game she had invented with a piece of string and a toy truck. Jordan glanced at them over his shoulder, still adjusting to their presence so natural in this space, like they had always belonged here. like he was the outsider learning to speak a language they already knew by heart. "You'll scare the eggs if you keep clanging," Maya said, without looking up. Jordan grinned, rinsing quieter. "I thought the rain would cancel all chicken duties." Maya shrugged. "Animals don't take sick days. Neither do mothers." He dried the last mug, then leaned against the counter. "How did you do it?" "Maya. Alone. 3 kids. This farm." She paused, the spoon in her hand hovering above the bowl. Her gaze dropped. "I didn't have a choice," she said, "and even if I did, I wasn't going to let them grow up wondering if they were a burden." Jordan studied her. There was no bitterness in her voice, just truth. "I meant to write," he said, "after the divorce, after I left." "You didn't," she replied. "No," he admitted. "I didn't." She poured the batter into a pan. "But you're here now." He nodded. "And I want to stay." Maya didn't respond. Instead, she turned and walked into the living room, kneeling beside the kids. "All right, team," she said. "Let's make something special." The 3 of them jumped up instantly, swarming around her like bees. Grace pulled out a sheet of construction paper. Ellie grabbed a handful of glitter, and Samuel already had a crayon in hand. Jordan watched from the doorway, unsure. Maya looked over her shoulder. "You coming?" He walked over slowly, sitting on the floor with a cautious sort of reverence. Ellie immediately handed him a glue stick. "We're making a name sign for our treehouse," she explained. "You have a treehouse?" he asked. Grace giggled. "Not yet, but we're manifesting." He raised an eyebrow. "You know what manifesting is?" "Mommy says it means we build something in our hearts first," Samuel said, without looking up from his paper. Jordan blinked. "Well, damn." "Oh. Language," Maya warned without turning. Jordan smirked, then picked up a marker. "What's the treehouse name?" he asked. The 3 children looked at each other. Then Grace spoke. "We want to name it after our family." Jordan's hand paused mid-stroke. "Oh?" Ellie nodded. "Like a team name, but with feelings." "What about the Mighty Williams?" he offered. They frowned in unison. "Too cheesy," Grace declared. Samuel, quiet as always, whispered, "What about Hale?" Jordan looked up. The boy met his eyes. "That's yours, right?" Jordan nodded slowly. "Yeah, it is." The room went still. Maya, still crouched at the edge of the group, said nothing. Her eyes searched his face, wary. Samuel went back to coloring. "Then it's Hale Treehouse." Jordan couldn't speak. It wasn't just the name. It was how easily they said it. As if it had always belonged to them. As if his absence hadn't stolen their right to it. Grace wrote it carefully in green crayon. Hale Treehouse. Each letter jagged and uneven. She handed it to Jordan. "For the door," she said. He looked down at the paper, his name spelled out by tiny fingers in crooked strokes, and felt something crack open in his chest. Not the old guilt. Not the shame. Something else. A beginning. "Thank you," he said, voice low. Ellie grinned. "Now you're officially part of the build." Samuel added a sun in the corner of the sign. Grace drew 3 hearts. Ellie glued a chicken feather on top. Jordan stood, taking the sign with him like it was made of gold. He stepped onto the porch and nailed it gently to the wooden beam above the steps. The rain was light now. More mist than drops. The sky had softened to pale blue. Behind him, Maya watched from the doorway. "You okay?" she asked. He didn't turn. "Yeah. I just didn't expect it to feel like that." "Like what?" "Like I belong." She was quiet for a beat. "They gave you a name," she said. "It's not the same as forgiveness, but it's something." He turned to face her. "It's more than I thought I'd get." "Don't let them regret it," she said. "I won't." She stepped back inside, and he followed. That evening, after the kids were in bed, Maya handed him a pillow and a folded quilt. "You'll take the couch again," she said. He nodded. "And tomorrow," she added, "we fix the fence. It's splitting on the west side." "Got it." Now was locked. "And wear real boots." "Noted." She turned to leave, then hesitated. "Good job today," she said softly. "With the kids, with the name." Jordan nodded once. "Thanks for letting me be part of it. Earn it again tomorrow," she said. "Names fade fast when you don't live up to them." And with that, she disappeared down the hallway, leaving Jordan standing in the quiet, the sign above the door catching the moonlight, swaying gently in the breeze. By 7 a.m., the sun had burned off the last of the mist from the night before, and the Arizona sky stretched wide and blue above the ranch. The rain had softened the dirt, making it easier to dig and harder to stay clean, something Jordan Hale learned within 5 minutes of working on the western fence line. He wiped his brow with the back of his wrist, mud streaking across his temple. A wheelbarrow of rotted boards sat beside him, and a stack of new planks leaned against the post Maya had marked yesterday with a red bandana. She was already at work, hammering in the corner rails with a precision that made him feel like a rookie carpenter. Her plaid shirt was rolled at the sleeves, revealing strong, tan arms. Her eyes scanned the fence like a contractor reviewing blueprints. Focused, no nonsense, in control. "You're setting the nails crooked," she called, not even glancing up. Jordan looked at the post in front of him and scowled. "I'm improvising." "You're botching." He sighed and straightened the nail. "Remind me why I agreed to this." "Because you said you wanted to earn your name on that treehouse." "Touché." He reset the nail, struck it again, and watched it split clean through the board. "Damn it." Maya appeared beside him a second later, silent, assessing. She knelt and ran her fingers along the crack, then picked up the ruined board and handed him a new one. "No shortcuts," she said. "This fence has to hold through wind, coyotes, and 3 kids who think it's a balance beam." Jordan took the plank. "You ever get tired of being right?" She smirked. "Not once." They worked in tandem for the next hour, Jordan hauling planks, Maya measuring and guiding. The rhythm was oddly meditative. The swing of hammers, the scent of pine and dirt, the distant sound of Samuel's giggle floating from the porch. Then, in a lull between hammer strikes, Jordan said, "Did you ever try to reach me?" Maya didn't look at him. She lined up a board and set a nail. "No." "Not even once?" "No." He nodded slowly. "I think I deserved that." She finally looked at him. "It wasn't about punishment, Jordan. It was about survival. I had 3 mouths to feed. I didn't have time to chase a man who walked away." He gripped the post a little tighter. "Sometimes I imagined you'd show up at the hospital," she continued. "Or maybe send a letter, even a birthday card. But nothing came. So eventually, I stopped expecting." "I thought I was doing the right thing," he said, voice quiet. "I told myself leaving gave you freedom." "You didn't give me anything," Maya said sharply. "I took it, and I built something with it." Her eyes met his then clear, steady, unflinching. Jordan didn't respond. Instead, he picked up another plank and aligned it against the post. After a moment, Maya said, "You're better with the hammer now. Maybe I just need someone yelling at me." She chuckled. "You always did." They finished the section of the fence in near silence, working side by side as the morning wore on. When they finally stood back to examine it, the line was straight, sturdy, clean. The red bandana fluttered slightly on the top rail. Jordan leaned on his shovel. "That might be the first thing I've built with my hands in a decade. You should be proud." "I'm not sure I know how to feel proud anymore." Maya looked at him for a long second. Then, in a softer tone, she said, "The kids are proud of you." His throat tightened. "They don't even know who I am. They know what they see, and what they see is a man who shows up, who carries heavy things, who fixes broken stuff, and doesn't leave at sundown." He looked away, blinking at the horizon. Maya turned back toward the house. "Come on, lunch." They walked the long path together, dust rising with each step. At the porch, Grace and Ellie were having a tea party with stuffed animals. A small plate of crackers sat in the center, garnished with dandelions and imaginary frosting. Samuel sat nearby, reading out loud from a worn picture book. "Mr. Jordan," Grace called, "we saved you the dragon chair." Jordan blinked. "The what?" She pointed at an overturned bucket with a red bandana tied around it. "It's the strongest one," Ellie added. "For brave people." He laughed, touched more than he wanted to admit. "Then I guess I better earn it." He sat carefully, playing along as they poured him imaginary tea. Maya disappeared inside, only to return a few minutes later with real lemonade, thick slices of cornbread, and chilled watermelon. She set the tray down and raised an eyebrow. "Thought you were working, not playing royalty." "The lines are blurry around here," Jordan said. "You'll learn." As they ate, the kids took turns naming the animals on the farm and assigning them titles. The rooster became Sir Feathers. The goat was Lady Munch. The cow in the back pasture, clearly the favorite, was dubbed Princess Butterbell. "And what about me?" Jordan asked, teasing. Grace giggled. "You're King Fix-It." Maya smirked. High praise. Jordan looked around the yard, the fence they'd repaired, the coop he'd helped clean yesterday, the laughter of his children echoing through the air, and for the first time in years, the title didn't feel empty. Later, after the sun dipped low and the kids had gone inside for naps, Maya stood on the porch, arms crossed, watching him. "You didn't quit today," she said. "Didn't feel like quitting. You'll feel it eventually. This place breaks everyone at least once." Jordan leaned against the porch rail, the wind tugging gently at his shirt. "I don't mind breaking, long as I get to stay." Maya looked at him for a long time, something unreadable in her eyes. Then she turned and walked inside, leaving the door open behind her. This time, she didn't close it. The screen door creaked behind Jordan as he stepped outside, mug of black coffee in hand. The early evening air smelled of dry sagebrush, and something faintly metallic like a storm was lurking just out of sight. The kids were still asleep, curled into a warm, messy heap on the living room rug. A blanket tangled over their legs and stuffed animals strewn like battlefield casualties. Maya had gone to the feed store in town, giving him the rare moment of solitude. But he didn't feel alone. The land pulsed with life, the sway of cottonwoods along the creek, the soft rustle of something in the tall grass, the distant hum of a truck somewhere beyond the ridge. It was the kind of silence that spoke in full paragraphs. Jordan sipped the coffee and looked toward the western sky. Thick clouds were forming in a low, determined line, moving faster than they should. He'd grown up in this part of Arizona. He knew what a storm like that could mean. He set the mug down and stepped off the porch. The barn door was ajar, and the wind tugged at it like a child testing boundaries. He jogged over and pulled it shut, latching it with both hands. Just as he turned, a truck engine growled in the distance, not from the main road. From the service trail, a private lane only a few people even knew existed. Jordan's brow furrowed. The sound grew louder, then stopped abruptly. He walked slowly toward the edge of the pasture, boots crunching on gravel. A white pickup idled by the tree line, unfamiliar. Clean. Too clean for someone local. And then the door opened. A man stepped out, tall, tan suit, thin mustache, city shoes. Jordan's stomach tightened. The man looked up and smiled, slick and professional. "Mr. Hale?" Jordan didn't answer immediately. "You are?" "Logan Bradford. I'm an acquisitions officer for Thorn Industries." Jordan crossed his arms. "You're trespassing." "Apologies," Logan said, raising his hand slightly. "We tried calling, but there was no answer. I figured a personal visit might accelerate things." Jordan's jaw clenched. "You're with Thorn." "Yes. We've been reviewing your old holdings, particularly this property. The records list you as majority owner, but our legal team flagged an anomaly, some kind of delay in paperwork finalization when you stepped away. Technically, it's not closed." Jordan stared at him. So, Logan said with a practiced smile. "It means the land is still fluid. With the right leverage, we might be able to acquire it before the title solidifies, especially if the current resident doesn't have the means to claim it fully." His meaning was clear. Jordan took a step forward, his voice low. "That resident has a name, Maya Williams." "Of course," Logan said quickly. "No disrespect intended. But Miss Williams is not the legal heir. You are. Which means our offer comes to you." Jordan glanced at the storm clouds again. They were moving fast now, churning dark against the pale evening light. "I'm not interested," he said. Logan tilted his head. "Are you sure? The offer's generous. 7 figures. Clean close. You walk away without any strings." Jordan's fists curled. Logan mistook the silence for hesitation. "It's a small farm, Mr. Hale. The equipment's dated. The infrastructure's hanging by a thread. No irrigation system to speak of. 3 kids, 1 woman holding it together with chicken wire and willpower. It's a miracle it's still standing." Jordan stepped closer, voice sharp. "That woman is raising my children." Logan's polished smile faltered. Jordan didn't blink. "You're going to turn around, get in that truck, and drive back the way you came. If I see you here again..." The wind picked up, slapping dust into their faces. "Fair enough," Logan said, adjusting his collar. "But the offer stands. Just in case you change your mind. Storms have a way of changing people." He turned and got into the truck, tires crunching over the gravel as he pulled away. Jordan watched him disappear into the trees. He stood there long after the engine had faded, until the first raindrop hit his cheek. Back inside, Maya had returned and was sorting through dry goods in the kitchen. "I passed a white truck by the ridge," she said without turning. "Didn't recognize it." Jordan closed the door behind him, rain tapping on the roof. "Guy from Thorne. Logan something." Her back stiffened. What did he want? "To buy the land." She turned. "They can't. Not legally." "Not yet," he agreed. "But they're sniffing around." Maya wiped her hands on a dish towel. "They'll keep coming." "I know." She stared at him. "What did you say?" Jordan met her eyes. "I told him to leave. And if they offer more next time, I'll still say no." The room was quiet for a beat. Then Maya said, "They know I can't afford to fight them in court. I don't have the money to defend the claim if it gets challenged." "You won't have to," Jordan said. "I'm not selling. Not to them. Not to anyone." She looked at him. Really looked at him, searching for cracks, for loopholes, for signs of a man ready to run at the first sign of real weather. But he didn't flinch. The storm outside cracked lightning across the field, illuminating the room for a heartbeat. Jordan stepped closer. "They're not taking this place. Not while I'm here." Maya studied him. Then, for the first time since he returned, she nodded not with caution, but with belief. "You better mean it," she said. "I do." Outside, the wind howled. The rain picked up, but inside, the walls held firm. The storm hit hard that night. The kind of wind that shook window panes and moaned through the eaves. The kind that made old floorboards groan like they remembered every storm before it. Rain fell in thick, sideways sheets, hammering the tin roof with fury. Inside the farmhouse, the kids huddled in the living room under a quilt fortress, flashlights flickering against the couch cushions. Ellie had armed herself with a plastic sword, convinced the storm was a dragon trying to steal their snacks. Samuel was reading aloud again, his voice calm as if he could tame thunder with words. Grace, though she just sat quietly, her hand clutching a tiny wooden carving of a horse Maya had given her last winter. Jordan stood by the front window, watching the trees bend under the weight of the wind. He wasn't afraid, exactly. But something about the storm stirred a restless ache in his chest, the kind he used to feel at the airport, right before boarding a flight to somewhere new and far. Except now, he didn't want to leave. Maya came down the hall, tying her robe tighter around her waist. Her braid had come loose, strands clinging to her face. "I just checked the barn." The latch on the east door snapped. "It's wide open." Jordan turned from the window. "Do we have animals out there?" "The mare and the goat. If they spook and bolt through that opening, we'll lose them in the dark." "I'll go." She blinked. "It's brutal out there. I've handled worse." She studied him for a second, then nodded. "Check the feed room too. Water's leaking through the roof. There's a bucket near the south wall." He grabbed his jacket and flashlight, already soaked the second he stepped onto the porch. The rain felt like needles, sharp and cold. But Jordan didn't hesitate. The barn loomed ahead, barely visible through the downpour. He yanked the east door closed with both hands, muscles straining against the wind. The latch was gone, entirely snapped clean. He braced a shovel against the frame and wedged it tight with an overturned feed bin. Inside, the mare stamped nervously, her breath steaming in the air. "Easy, girl," Jordan murmured. "Just a little noise, nothing we can't beat." The goat bleated from the corner, tangled in an old rope. Jordan moved fast, untangling it and guiding the animal back to its stall. His flashlight flickered, then died. Great. He worked by memory and instinct, checking the roof, finding the drip, moving the bucket an inch to the left where it caught water more cleanly. Everything inside smelled of hay and damp wood and earth. Familiar, grounding smells. Just as he turned to leave, something caught his foot, a bundle of old cloth shoved behind a bale of straw. Curious. He crouched and pulled it free. It was a duffel bag. Weathered, torn in one corner. He unzipped it. Inside were several documents, a small tin box, and a folded piece of blue cloth, a child's shirt. He held it up. then saw the name embroidered faintly near the hem. Samuel. Jordan's breath hitched. This was a baby shirt, years old. And it looked just like the one Maya had shown him in a picture when they were still together, something she'd hand-stitched while pregnant. He opened the tin box next. Inside, hospital bracelets, 3 of them, dates matching the children's birth. And tucked between the documents was a photo. Him and Maya. She was holding 3 tiny swaddled babies. He was asleep in a chair, head resting against her shoulder, one hand still cradling Grace. Jordan sat back, stunned. The memory rushed in like a flood. He had been there, not for long, maybe just a night or 2, but it had happened. She must have taken the photo on her old Polaroid. He vaguely remembered that chair, the beeping of machines, Maya whispering lullabies he didn't know the words to. Why didn't I remember? He tucked the contents back into the bag carefully and zipped it. Then, still soaked to the bone, he ran back through the storm. Maya was in the kitchen, drying towels by the stove when he burst in, dripping water everywhere. He dropped the bag onto the table. "Why didn't you tell me I was there?" She turned slowly. Her face gave nothing away at first, then softened. "You were. But barely," she said quietly. "You came, saw them, held them for an hour, then left that same night. You told me you had a meeting in Denver. I didn't hear from you for months." Jordan sat down hard, staring at the photo again. "I don't remember any of it. You were exhausted. You hadn't slept in days. I think you didn't want to remember." He swallowed. "I thought I left before they were born." "No," she said. "You were there when Grace opened her eyes. You cried, then you disappeared." The weight of her words dropped on him like thunder. "I was a coward," he whispered. "Yes," she said, "but now you know, and now you decide what you do with that." They sat in silence for a long time, the storm raging outside, their memories finally catching up with them. Then Grace wandered in, half asleep, blanket over her shoulders. "Why are you crying, Mr. Jordan?" she asked. He wiped his face with the back of his hand. "I'm not." She climbed onto his lap anyway, curling into him like it was the most natural thing in the world. Maya watched them for a moment, then poured another cup of coffee and sat down across the table. The storm would pass. But the reckoning had just begun. The ground was still wet the next morning, soft underfoot and rich with the smell of stormwater and earth. Puddles reflected the sky, and birds called out in the trees as if to confirm that the worst had passed. Jordan stood by the fence with a shovel in hand. The duffel bag from the barn rested on the ground beside him. His eyes scanned the property, Maya hanging clothes on the line, Samuel skipping in circles with Ellie, Grace examining worms with scholarly focus. The world had resumed its rhythm, but inside Jordan, something had changed. The photo from the tin box wouldn't leave his mind. That one frozen moment of peace, him, Maya, and the babies, all cradled in one frame. He hadn't earned that image. Not then, but maybe he could now. He started digging. The spot was just behind the treehouse in progress. A raised plot Maya had used once for herbs, long since overtaken by weeds. He cleared it, turned the soil, worked in silence until the sun sat high and sweat soaked his shirt. "What are you doing?" Maya's voice called from the porch. Jordan didn't look up. "Starting something." She stepped off the porch, arms crossed. "That was my time garden. It's been dead for years. I'm bringing it back." She studied him. "Why?" He glanced up, wiping his brow. "Because I found my name again. And I want it to mean something." Maya didn't reply. She just watched him, then turned and went inside. By afternoon, he had planted 3 small rows, lavender, basil, and thyme. Nothing grand, but alive. Intentional. The kids gathered around when he was done. "What's this?" Samuel asked, poking the earth. "It's a garden," Jordan said. "I used to be good at killing them. Thought I'd try keeping one alive." Grace tilted her head. "Like a plant nursery?" "Kind of." Ellie crouched down beside him. "Can we help?" He smiled. "It's for you, all of you." They each took turns pressing a seed into the earth, patting it gently, whispering names to the soil: Butterbell, Sir Rudy, Captain Mint. Maya stood at the door again, quiet, watching. That evening, Jordan took the photo from the tin box and brought it to the kitchen. Maya was stirring a pot of stew, her brow furrowed in concentration. "I want this on the wall," he said, holding it up. She glanced over. That old thing? It's the only proof I ever belonged here. You didn't act like you belonged. I know. He placed the photo on the counter, careful not to bend it. But I want them to see it, know it. I was there, and now I'm here. Maya stirred the stew in silence. He continued. I thought leaving would make things cleaner. I thought chasing success meant I could send money, and maybe ease the guilt. But all I did was vanish. Maya's jaw tightened, but she didn't stop him. I was afraid, he said, of failing, of being ordinary, of being like my father, drunk, broke, angry. So I made myself into someone else. And in doing that, I left behind everything that made me real. Now she turned. Her eyes weren't hard, just tired. You still haven't told them you're their father. I will. When? Jordan swallowed. Soon. But not before I earn the right to say it. She didn't speak. The air between them felt thick, heavy with past regrets and fragile hope. Then, quietly, Maya said, You should be the one to tell them. When you're ready. Jordan nodded, breath catching in his chest. He picked up the photo again. Do you remember what we were laughing about? Maya smiled faintly. You called the nurse ma'am and she was 22. She made you change a diaper just to get back at you. He laughed softly. That sounds about right. She turned back to the stew, and he stood there, the photo in his hands, feeling like a man slowly stepping into his own shadow and filling it for the first time. Later that night, the kids begged for a story before bed. Not a book. A real story. One from when you were little. As Grace requested, Jordan sat on the floor beside their beds. Maya standing near the door with her arms folded but listening. Always listening. Well, he began, when I was about your age, I used to believe thunder was the sound of giants bowling in the sky. Ellie gasped. Really? Yep, and if you listened close enough, you could tell who was winning. Samuel squinted. But there are no giants. Jordan grinned. Not the big kind. Just the kind that live in our heads when we're scared. No. What do they do? Grace asked. They remind us to be brave. He looked up, and Maya was still there. She met his gaze, then walked away without a word. But she left the door open again. That night, long after the kids were asleep, Jordan stepped out onto the porch. The moon was bright, casting shadows across the yard. He walked to the new garden and sat beside it. He pressed the photo into the earth, gently wrapped in plastic, beneath a flat stone. A memory buried, a seed planted, and beside it, he whispered, This is where my name begins again. The morning was warm and still almost too still. No rustle from the trees. No hum from the barn. Even the chickens seemed subdued. Jordan woke early, as he had every day for the past week. But today something in the air unsettled him. Maya was already up, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee in one hand and a yellowed envelope in the other. He slowed his steps when he saw her. She didn't look up. It came this morning, she said, voice low. The mail truck nearly got stuck in the mud. Left this on the porch. Jordan stepped closer. What is it? Maya hesitated. Then she slid it across the table. The return address was stamped. Thorn Legal Group, Phoenix, AZ. Jordan's jaw clenched. He tore the envelope open with steady fingers and pulled out a single sheet of thick legal stationery. After scanning the contents, he let out a slow breath. They're filing a claim. Maya looked at him now. Her eyes were calm, but the tension in her jaw betrayed her. They've submitted intent to acquire the land through legal arbitration, he said, reading, citing abandonment, improper transfer of ownership, and lapse in tax filings from the year after I left. I took care of those taxes, Maya said sharply. I paid them, every damn year. I know, he replied, but they're using the original deed, the one I never signed over. And now they want to take it all back. Jordan folded the letter, laid it on the table, and sat down heavily. They're betting I'll walk away to avoid the fight. Maya snorted. They've clearly forgotten who you married. That made him smile just a little. Then it faded. They have deep pockets, lawyers on retainer, and we have kids who need breakfast and a fence that needs another 10 feet. We've got more than that, she said. We've got roots in this soil. Jordan tapped the table. You ever think about leaving, selling, starting fresh? She didn't even pause. Never. He leaned back. Then we fight. Maya stood. Damn right, we fight. Later that afternoon, Jordan sat with the kids under the cottonwood tree, working on new drawings for the treehouse. Grace insisted it needed a pulley system. Ellie wanted curtains. Samuel just wanted a hidden hatch. Do you think we could build a real trapdoor? He asked seriously. Jordan chuckled. Why? Planning an escape? No, Samuel said. For secrets. Jordan glanced at him. What kind of secrets? The boy shrugged. Like letters, or things you don't want to lose. The words hit harder than they should have. Jordan ruffled his hair. We'll figure something out. From the porch, Maya watched them with her arms crossed. Then, as if remembering something, she went inside. Moments later, she returned with an old wooden box plain, but carefully carved. She handed it to Jordan. I was going to give this to them when they turned 10, she said. But maybe it's better now. He opened it. Inside were letters, dozens of them, each one marked with a name and a date. For Grace, Ellie, and Samuel, Maya said. One for every year. I wrote to them what they liked, what they said, what they learned. I didn't want them to grow up and wonder who they were, in case I wasn't around. Jordan blinked, overwhelmed. You did this alone? She nodded. He picked up a letter labeled Grace, age 2, and read aloud the first line. Today you told me the moon was just a flashlight in the sky. I didn't argue, because honestly, that made more sense than anything else. He swallowed hard. They should read these. They will. In time. He looked up at her. You're the strongest person I've ever known. Maya shrugged. I just didn't have the luxury of falling apart. He stood and stepped closer. You don't have to carry it all alone anymore. Zarily, she met his gaze, and for the first time, she didn't flinch. That evening, as the sun dipped low, Jordan pulled out a notepad and began writing his own letters. He sat on the porch, scribbling beneath the glow of the bug zapper light. To Samuel, you remind me of myself, before I got scared. Keep being curious. Keep asking questions, even the hard ones. To Ellie, you hold the world like it's already yours. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. To Grace, you lead with your heart. That's not weakness, it's strength the world doesn't always recognize. And to Maya, you gave me a second chance before I deserved one. I won't waste it. Not again. He folded each letter carefully and placed them in the wooden box beside Maya's. The wind picked up, rustling the cottonwood leaves. Then he heard its soft footsteps behind him. Couldn't sleep? He asked without turning. No, Maya said. Neither could you. He smiled. Too much on my mind. She stepped beside him, barefoot, her hair loose, eyes tired but clear. I think we should tell them, she said. About me? She nodded. They deserve to know where they come from, and who's standing in front of them now. Jordan looked down at the letters again. You think they'll understand? They're kids, she said. They'll ask questions, maybe cry, but they'll know the truth, and that's more than a lot of kids get. He took a breath, the kind that felt like turning a page. Tomorrow morning, he said. Maya reached out, her hand brushing his. Then we'll do it together, and under the quiet stars of Arizona, the two of them sat side by side holding names, holding memories, and holding on. The morning light came through the windows like a soft apology, gentle, golden, and slow to rise. It spilled across the wooden floors, illuminating the worn spots where 3 small children had danced, played, and sprawled out with picture books and juice-stained socks. Jordan sat on the couch, his hands pressed together, elbows on his knees. The box of letters sat on the coffee table like a silent witness. Maya stood in the kitchen, her arms folded tight against her chest, watching the clock tick toward the moment they could no longer delay. Are you sure? He asked, not looking at her. No, she answered, but we're doing it anyway. He nodded. That was enough. The kids barreled into the room moments later, Ellie with a sock half on, Samuel clutching a dinosaur, Grace still yawning, a book tucked under her arm. Breakfast? Grace asked, flopping beside Jordan. Soon, Maya said gently. But first, we need to talk. The tone in her voice made all 3 stop. They sat straighter, eyes alert. Jordan reached for the box and opened it slowly. I want to tell you a story, he began, voice rough. It's not about a dragon or a spaceship. It's about you. And me. Samuel narrowed his eyes. Us? Yes, Jordan said. You've known me as Mr. Jordan, a helper, a builder, but I wasn't always just that. A long time ago, I was someone very different. He looked at Maya. She nodded slightly. He turned back to them. A few years ago, I met someone who changed my life. Her name was Maya Williams. Ellie smiled. That's Mommy. He chuckled. Yeah, it is. And I loved her, more than I knew how to say. But when things got hard, I did something really stupid. I ran away. The room was quiet now. No giggles, just soft breathing and wide eyes. I thought I was protecting her by staying gone. But the truth is, I missed everything. I missed the day you were born. He paused, but I didn't miss all of it. I was there for a little while. Long enough to hold you. Long enough to fall in love with you. Then I left again. And I didn't come back for a long, long time. No, Grace whispered. Why? He closed his eyes. Because I was scared. And selfish. And I thought I had to become someone bigger before I could come back. Are you back now? Samuel asked. Jordan looked at him, his chest tight. Yes, I am. Maya stepped forward then, placing a hand on Jordan's shoulder. There's more, she said. He's not just someone helping on the farm. He's your dad. Ellie blinked. Our real dad? Yes, Jordan said. Your father, from the very beginning. Silence. Grace's lower lip trembled. But why didn't you tell us before? Because I didn't know how, he said. I didn't feel like I deserved it. But I couldn't keep pretending. You have the right to know who you are, where you come from. Samuel stood up slowly. That's why we all have green eyes like you. Jordan smiled. That's right. Ellie leaned against Grace, her fingers playing with the hem of her shirt. Does that mean you're staying? If you want me to, Jordan said. I'll stay as long as you'll have me. They didn't speak, but a moment later, Samuel crossed the room and threw his arms around Jordan's neck. Then Grace, then Ellie, all tangled up in limbs and tears and the quiet thudding of 4 hearts learning how to beat together again. Maya turned away, wiping her eyes on her sleeve. Later that day, they built the first wall of the treehouse. Jordan guided the kids as they took turns hammering nails into the base. Ellie insisted on naming each board after a farm animal. Samuel drew a map of their kingdom in chalk on the floor of the platform. Grace declared herself the official recorder of family stories and took notes in a pink notebook. As they worked, Maya brought lemonade and sandwiches and stood back, letting the laughter swell like music. At one point, Grace pulled Jordan aside. Does this mean we can call you Dad now? She asked. His breath caught. Only if you want to. She grinned. Okay, but I'm gonna call you Dad and King Fix-It. He laughed, ruffling her hair. I think I can live with that. That evening, Maya found Jordan sitting on the porch, legs stretched out, the wooden box of letters beside him. You did good today, she said. He looked up. You think they'll forgive me? She sat beside him. They already did. Kids forgive faster than grown-ups. It's our job to catch up. He handed her the letter he'd written to her the night before. She didn't open it right away, just held it in her lap, fingers brushing over the edges. You're doing the hard work now, she said quietly. You're showing up. And that's more than most ever do. The sky turned golden behind the hills, casting the farm in long shadows. Crickets started their nightly chorus. The air smelled like hay and warm bread and the faintest scent of lavender from the new garden. Jordan took her hand. I'm not running anymore. She squeezed it. We're not letting them take this place, he added, no matter what thorn throws at us. Maya's eyes sharpened. They'll come harder next time. Then we pushed back harder. The screen door creaked open behind them. Ellie poked her head out. Mommy, can we have a campfire tomorrow? Maya smiled. If the weather's good. Ellie beamed and disappeared inside. Jordan looked out across the land fences standing strong, crops green and climbing, and 3 children who now knew his name. Home, he thought. Finally, 2 days later, a black SUV pulled into the gravel drive, tires crunching like bones. It was sleek, city-polished, and out of place against the worn wood of the farmhouse and the soft sway of cotton fields. Jordan saw it first. He was trimming fence wire along the east side of the pasture. He wiped his hands on a rag, tossed the clippers into the toolbox, and started walking toward the house, slow, measured, alert. Maya stepped out onto the porch with a towel over her shoulder, her brow knitting. The kids were inside, watching a nature show. The SUV's door opened. Logan Bradford stepped out again, same smirk, different suit. Behind him came a second man, older, gray hair, sharp eyes, a briefcase gripped like a weapon. "Mr. Hale," Logan called out, straightening his tie. "Miss Williams, we were hoping you might spare us a few minutes." Jordan stopped 5 feet from the steps, hands on his hips. "You've got 60 seconds. After that, I call the sheriff." The older man stepped forward. "I'm Charles Ridley, senior counsel with Thorne Industries." "Congratulations," Maya said coldly. "That's 60 seconds used up." Charles didn't blink. "We're not here to intimidate. We're here to negotiate." Jordan scoffed. "You don't bring a lawyer to a farm unless you're planning to take something." Charles ignored the jab and pulled a folder from his briefcase. "Thorne is prepared to make a final offer. $5 million. No contest. No strings. The farm transfers cleanly, and you walk away with more than enough to start again." Jordan crossed his arms. "We're not starting again. We're staying." Logan stepped forward. "Mr. Hale, let's be realistic. This land isn't worth a quarter of that. We're offering sentiment pricing here. Mercy pricing. You're not going to see that number again." Maya narrowed her eyes. "Your disparity. Why?" Charles hesitated just for a second, then recovered. "We have long-term development plans. Renewable energy fields. This tract is strategically valuable. And you don't own it," Jordan said. "Not now. Not ever." Logan's smile faded. "If you reject this offer, you're triggering litigation. You might win. You might not. But you'll drown in legal fees trying." Jordan stepped onto the porch beside Maya. "We've got truth, and title, and 3 kids who call this home." Maya added, "and we know the last owner before us died in debt to your company. You're not trying to buy land. You're trying to bury paperwork." Charles's lips tightened. "You've been warned," Logan said. "What comes next isn't friendly." He turned and got back into the SUV. Charles lingered a second longer, his eyes scanning the house, the porch, the family behind the door. Then he followed. The SUV reversed down the drive, leaving dust and tension behind it. That night, Jordan sat at the dining table, surrounded by papers, receipts, old deeds, and legal books from the town library. Maya brewed a fresh pot of coffee. The kids had gone to sleep after roasting marshmallows in the backyard, the firelight soft on their faces. "They're coming for blood," Jordan muttered. "They've been coming for it since the day they built their first glass tower," Maya replied. "This is just another angle." He looked up. "They think I'll break." Will you?" "No," he said. "But I don't want this to become a war that poisons everything. The kids. They just started calling me Dad. I don't want their first memory of that to be watching me get hauled into court." Maya sat down beside him, her hand brushing his. "Then we fight smart." He studied her face. "You've done this alone for so long." She nodded. "But I'm not alone anymore, and neither are you. I quitte moment past." Then Jordan said, "There's something else. I've been looking into Thorne's land acquisitions. They've been using shell companies to buy out struggling farms all across the county, quietly. They're building something massive." "Energy grid?" He shook his head. "No, private airport, for offshore logistics. It'll cut right through the reservation lands if they get access." Maya leaned back. "So it's bigger than us." "Much." She stood, grabbed her phone, and began scrolling. "I know someone. Works at the county recorder's office. Might be able to get us access to their early filings." He raised an eyebrow. "We go public with this. We start a real storm." Maya met his gaze, then let it rain. The next morning, the farm was alive with color. The treehouse had its first painted walls, lavender on one side, red on the other, a compromise after a family vote. Jordan climbed up to hammer in the final frame beam when he spotted Ellie standing below with a notepad. "What's that?" he called. She held it up. "List of rules. For the treehouse." He chuckled. "Let's hear it. 1. No fighting. 2. No lying. 3. No taking cookies without permission. 4. No bosses, unless it's grace. 5. Always say the truth, even if it's hard. Jordan paused at that last one. That's a good rule, he said. Hard, but good. Grace climbed up next to him and whispered, even if you're scared. Especially then, he said, brushing her hair from her eyes. Maya watched from the kitchen window. Heart full, fear pulsing beneath it. They were building something beautiful, but trouble had already drawn a line in the dirt. And soon, it would cross it. The letter arrived in a white envelope with embossed lettering, no postage stamp, just a name, Maricopa County Court, Notice of Civil Action. Jordan held it in his hands as though it were burning. In some ways, it was. Maya stood across the kitchen, quiet but tense, her arms crossed and her eyes dark with anticipation. That's it, isn't it? Jordan nodded. They've filed officially. Preliminary hearing in 10 days. Thorne Industries versus Jordan Hale and Maya Williams for unlawful occupancy and trespass on corporate-acquired land. They're calling us squatters now, she scoffed. I've got 27 receipts that say otherwise. He tossed the envelope on the table and leaned forward, bracing himself. They want to provoke us into folding, wear us down, wear us out. Well, Maya said, grabbing her keys from the hook. Then it's time we talk to someone who knows how to fight bigger storms than this. Who? Marianne Collier. Jordan blinked. Isn't she the one who sued the mining company 10 years ago and won? Yup, and got death threats for a year after. Still hasn't flinched. You think she'd take our case? Maya gave him a look that said, she'll take mine. The drive into town was quiet. Jordan glanced at the window, watching the dry Arizona landscape flicker by cacti, dust, and stubborn stretches of desert grass. Maya drove like she always did, focused, steady, no room for panic. They pulled into the parking lot behind a small office nestled between a thrift store and an old feed shop. The brass plaque read, Collier and Reeve, Legal Counsel. Inside, the walls were lined with old black and white photos, marches, protests, courtroom sketches. A woman in her 60s with salt and pepper hair and skin the color of mahogany looked up from her desk and raised an eyebrow. You brought backup this time, she said, standing. Marianne, Maya greeted, shaking her hand. Meet Jordan Hale. Marianne studied him for a moment longer than was comfortable, then gave a curt nod. The runner. Jordan flinched slightly but held his ground, the one trying not to be. She motioned to 2 chairs. Then let's get to work. For the next hour, they laid out everything. The land deed, the birth certificates, the timeline of Jordan's departure and return, the discovery of the development plans, and the children's connection to the farm. Marianne took notes in rapid, angular script, never once asking them to slow down. When they finished, she closed her notebook with a snap. This isn't just a land grab, she said. It's a strategy. They've targeted smallholders, mostly minority-owned properties, for the past 2 years. Quiet acquisitions under dummy corporations. If they win here, they set a precedent. Jordan nodded. That's what I was afraid of. I'll take the case, Marianne said. But if we do this, it becomes public. Press, interviews, depositions. They'll dig into everything. Your finances, your kids, your history, including your disappearance. I'm ready, Jordan said. Maya added, so am I. Marianne gave a thin smile. Good, because they won't fight fair. By the time they returned to the farm, dusk had begun to settle. The kids were in the yard, painting wooden signs for the treehouse. Jordan watched from the porch as Grace carefully stenciled "No grown-ups without permission" onto a plank. Samuel worked on a crooked arrow that read Fort Freedom, and Ellie was writing Hale House in pink, blocky letters. He stepped down the steps slowly. Ellie, he said softly. Why that name? She shrugged. 'Cause it's ours now. Jordan swallowed. You like it? Yeah, sounds like home. He walked over, crouched down, and picked up a brush. Can I help? Only if you paint slow, Samuel warned. We're doing this careful. I can do careful. Maya came outside with a pitcher of lemonade and paper cups, watching the moment unfold. Later that night, after the kids were asleep, Jordan stood in the doorway of the living room staring at the fireplace mantel. On it rested 3 frames, one of the children, one of Maya holding baby Grace, and now the photo he had found in the barn, finally set into a new wooden frame. He turned as Maya walked in, drying her hands on a towel. Marianne's filing the countersuit tomorrow, he said. We're officially in it. She exhaled slowly, the kind of breath people take before stepping onto a battlefield. Good. Jordan reached into the drawer by the fireplace and pulled out another envelope. What's that? Maya asked. He handed it to her. I drafted a will. She froze. Jordan, no. Listen, it names you sole owner of the land. No loopholes. No family claims. No corporations. If anything happens, they won't get it. Her eyes softened, then filled. I don't want to talk about that. I know, he said, but I do, because for the first time in a long time, I know who I am, and where I'm supposed to be. She set the envelope down and stepped closer. You're their father, she whispered. You're my family, and no company, no courtroom, no threat is ever going to take that from us. He cupped her face in his hands. Then let them try. She kissed him softly, and for a brief moment, everything else disappeared, the lawyers, the lawsuits, the weight of past choices. There was only now. And now was worth fighting for. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying with it the first hints of summer heat, and something else, something charged, like electricity in dry air. War was coming, but so was justice. The courthouse was beige and sun-bleached, a squat building that looked more like a forgotten bank than a place where lives were split or spared. Inside, the air was too cold, too sterile, too unlike the warm earth of the farm that pulsed beneath Jordan's boots just that morning. He stood at the front of the small courtroom beside Marianne, wearing a clean but slightly wrinkled suit. Maya sat behind him, a steady presence, with the kids at home under the watch of Miss Clara from down the road. She had baked cinnamon rolls for breakfast and promised to spoil them rotten until their parents returned. Across the aisle, Logan Bradford leaned back smugly in his chair, tapping his pen rhythmically against a legal pad. Next to him, Charles Ridley read over a stack of motions with the expression of a man who already believed he'd won. The judge entered, a tall, silver-haired man with creased skin and skeptical eyes. Judge Robert Bellamy had a reputation for fairness and impatience in equal measure. Jordan silently prayed for the former. The bailiff called the case. Marianne stood. Your Honor, we represent the rightful co-owners of Hale Farm, who have maintained, developed, and sustained the property in question for over a decade. We intend to prove that the land grab by Thorn Industries is not only baseless but part of a wider pattern of predatory acquisition targeting minority-owned land throughout the state. Ridley stood next. Your Honor, this isn't a story about oppression or hardship. It's a legal matter, plain and simple. The deed was never properly transferred. Mr. Hale vacated the property, left the land dormant, and therefore defaulted on stewardship. We are merely reclaiming what is legally due to our client. Jordan clenched his jaw. He wanted to shout that the land had never been dormant, not with Maya's sweat in its soil and his children's footsteps carved into its dust. But he stayed still. Very well, Judge Bellamy said. We'll hear preliminary arguments. Begin. Outside, the farm was anything but quiet. Miss Clara had set up an old lemonade stand in front of the house, an idea sparked by Ellie and supported with full enthusiasm by Samuel and Grace. Instead of charging, they handed out lemonade and told every neighbor who stopped by, "This is our land, and we're not going anywhere." Bah! Locals came in waves, farmers, retired teachers, veterans from the Legion Hall, even Pastor Harlan, who hadn't walked without a cane in 10 years, showed up with a folding chair and a sign that read, "Community over corporations." Grace recorded interviews on her pink tablet, asking each guest, "What do you remember about Hale Farm?" One old rancher teared up and said, "Your mom gave me free eggs every Sunday for 2 years. That's what I remember." Back in the courtroom, Marianne presented the paper trail receipts, tax documents, photos of renovations, timelines, notarized statements from neighbors confirming the farm's active state. She then held up a weathered black and white image. "This is Thomas Hale," she said. "Jordan's father. He worked this land. Died in debt? Yes, but also died here. The farm isn't just an asset. It's blood, legacy, memory." The judge looked at the photo for a long moment. Logan stood, unfazed. Legacy doesn't override law. Sentiment doesn't rewrite statute. This is a deed issue. Marianne nodded. "Then let's talk about the law. Let's talk about how your firm funneled purchases through 6 shell corporations, targeting properties that hadn't filed new titles in over 5 years. Let's talk about internal memos we'll be submitting as evidence in discovery ones that mention Hale Farm by name, with a note that reads, Minority Optics Risk Use Third-Party Agent. Dude. Ridley's face went pale. Jordan watched the cracks begin. The judge leaned back. That document's real? Authenticated last week, Marianne said. I've submitted it into the court record. Logan reached for it like a drowning man reaching for a rope, but the damage was done. The courtroom had shifted. That night, the farm was lit with strings of mismatched bulbs and battery-powered lanterns. Miss Clara played old country gospel on her portable speaker, and the kids ran barefoot under the stars. Jordan stood near the new garden lavender growing stubborn and fragrant. Maya came up beside him, arms crossed. You did good today, she said. He chuckled. Marianne did the heavy lifting. You showed up, she said. You stood your ground. That matters. He looked at her, serious now. I didn't just leave you. I left them. I left the fight. And now? She asked. Now I want it all back. Not the past, not a redo, but today, and tomorrow, and every foot of this soil under their feet. Maya looked out over the fields. Then let's keep going. He reached for her hand. With you, I'll go anywhere. From the porch, Ellie shouted, Mom, Dad, we're making s'mores. Maya smiled. Coming. Jordan pulled her close for just a second longer before they turned toward the light. In the days that followed, word spread. Local papers ran headlines. Social media caught wind. Farm fights back. Big money versus family roots. Letters of support poured in. A law student interned for Marianne, citing the case for her thesis on land rights. And at the next hearing, Judge Bellamy looked out over a courtroom filled to standing room only. He tapped his gavel and said, This case has become about more than one family, so let's treat it like the example it's become. Jordan felt Maya's hand slip into his, and for the first time since returning, he believed the fight was not just winnable but right. The sky above the farm had turned a violent gray by noon. Thick clouds rolled in from the east, dark and low, crackling with the promise of a storm that had been building for days. Jordan stood out by the barn, his shirt clinging to his back, sleeves rolled, eyes fixed on the sky. They're stalling, Marianne had told them the night before, dragging every motion, trying to bleed you dry with time. No, he didn't say it aloud, but he knew she was right. That was the game now. Delay, 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 until the cost of fighting outweighed the value of winning. Maya came out with a raincoat tucked under one arm and a folder in the other. I spoke to the local news again, she said. They want to do a live piece, tomorrow. He nodded. Let them. Maya hesitated. Jordan, are we ready for that? The scrutiny? The digging? He met her eyes. They're already digging. But the more people who see us standing, the harder it is to knock us down. Lightning crackled overhead. She handed him the folder. Letters. Dozens of them. Neighbors. Old friends. Even people from the reservation. All saying this farm means something. Not just to us. To them. Jordan flipped it open. The first was from a teacher who used to bring her students out to learn about crops. The second, from a man who remembered Maya handing out produce after a fire wiped out 3 trailers in the next town over. And then a letter with no name, just typed text. I grew up not far from you. My daddy told me land like yours was never meant to be ours. That's what they want us to believe. But you prove it ain't true. Keep fighting. For you. For all of us. He closed the folder slowly. We don't have to win for everyone, Maya said. Just enough for them to believe they can fight, too. Later that night, with the wind howling and thunder pounding through the walls, Grace crawled into bed with them. I'm scared, she whispered. Jordan sat up and held the covers open for her. Come here, bug. Maya pulled her in close, brushing damp curls from her forehead. Is the house gonna break? Grace asked, her eyes wide. No, sweet pea, Maya said gently. It's built strong. Jordan kissed the top of her head. Like your mom. No. Grace smiled, then turned serious. What if the judge says we have to go? He swallowed. Then we figure it out together. But we're not running. Not again. Okay, she said, already drifting off. Outside, The storm raged on. The next morning brought quiet. Not peace, just quiet. A gray hush hung over everything. Wet soil, bent branches, a mailbox hanging open with waterlogged flyers spilling out. Jordan poured 2 cups of coffee while Maya answered the phone in the other room. When she returned, her face was pale. "That was Marianne," she said. His stomach dropped. "What happened?" "She was followed last night, after leaving the courthouse." He set the cup down. "Was she hurt?" "No, but her car was keyed. Tires slashed." "Jesus." She said it might be time to file for a protective order. This case, it's not just about land anymore. Jordan ran a hand over his face. "We always knew they'd get ugly." "They're scared," Maya said. "That's why they're desperate." Ugh. He nodded slowly. "And desperate men are dangerous." That afternoon, Jordan gathered the kids in the treehouse. They sat on old cushions and overturned crates. Samuel wore his cowboy hat. Ellie had brought a flashlight, just in case. Grace spoke first. "You look worried, Dad." He smiled at that word dad and shook his head. "Just thinking." "About the bad guys?" Samuel asked. "About all of us," Jordan said. "And how proud I am. You've been so brave. So kind. And I know this hasn't been easy." Ellie's voice was soft. "Are we going to lose our home?" "No," he said. "Even if they take the land, they can't take this. Our family. Our truth." Grace sat up straighter. "Then let's build a sign." "A sign?" he asked. She grinned. "A big one. So they see it before they even get out of their car." He laughed. "What should it say?" Samuel raised his hand. "How about, 'This land is ours'?" Ellie added, "And, 'Love lives here.'" Jordan blinked back, the sting in his eyes. "Perfect. Let's get to work." By sunset, the sign was planted just beyond the gate. Letters carved into salvaged wood, painted in bold white strokes. "This land is ours. Love lives here." Neighbors drove by and honked. Miss Clara brought peach cobbler. Pastor Harlan offered to say a prayer. Jordan stood next to the fence, one hand resting on the post. "They'll see this and come harder," Maya said, standing beside him. "Then we meet them," Jordan replied. "Harder still." She reached for his hand. "I never stopped believing you'd come home." He looked at her, voice thick. "I didn't believe I deserved it. But I'm here now. And I'm staying." Thunder rumbled again in the distance. But for now, the rain had passed, and beneath a battered sky, hope took root, stubborn and wild. The courtroom was packed. Every bench was filled, every wall lined with spectators, neighbors, reporters, farmers, veterans, even college kids with notepads and recorders. The local news station had set up just outside, the glow of their camera light filtering in through the tall windows of the old courthouse. Jordan sat at the plaintiff's table, Maya beside him. Her fingers were laced with his, both their palms damp but steady. Marianne stood between them, riffling through papers with calm precision. Her eyes betrayed nothing, but Jordan could feel the electric tension in the air. It was like being in the eye of a storm, too quiet, too still, just before the wind came rushing back. Across the aisle, Logan Bradford looked a little less smug than usual. Ridley sat rigid, jaw tight, whispering into his assistant's ear while adjusting his tie for the 5th time. The door opened at the rear of the courtroom, and Judge Bellamy stepped in. The room stood as one, then sat in unison. Jordan's heart pounded so loud he could hear it in his ears. "Before we begin," Judge Bellamy said, "I want to acknowledge the volume of public interest in this case. Emotions have run high. Allegations have been made, both in this courtroom and out. But today, we deal not in emotion, but in facts." He cleared his throat and glanced down at the folder before him. "This court has reviewed the evidence provided, the original deed history, testimony from local witnesses, proof of property tax payments, renovation records, and a series of internal communications from Thorn Industries." He paused, eyes flicking toward Ridley. Those communications raised particular concern. Maya gripped Jordan's hand tighter. "It is the opinion of this court that Thorn Industries, through its affiliated shell companies, engaged in a pattern of predatory land acquisition. This was done with full knowledge that rightful claimants would lack the financial or legal resources to defend their property." A hush fell over the room. "Therefore, this court rules in favor of the defendants, Jordan Hale and Maya Williams. Full ownership of Hale Farm is hereby restored to them, without restriction. Cheers erupted, not loud, but deep like a sigh held for months finally exhaled. Someone clapped, then another, and then the room filled with it. Applause and tears, and quiet gasps of joy. Logan's face drained of color. Ridley looked like he'd been punched in the chest. Maya pressed her forehead to Jordan's shoulder. He closed his eyes and let the sound of victory wash over him. Judge Bellamy tapped his gavel. Let the record show. This court still believes in justice. Oh. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed. Jordan and Maya stood arm in arm, flanked by Marianne and Miss Clara, who had shown up wearing her church hat and holding a cane like a scepter. A reporter pushed forward. Mr. Hale, what will you do now? He smiled, shielding his eyes from the sundae. Go home, fix the south fence, check the irrigation, and let my kids paint the chicken coop. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Marianne leaned into the mic. Let this be a message to every smallholder, every family struggling to keep what's theirs. You don't have to fold. You don't have to be rich. You just have to stand. More applause, more tears, and then it was over. Back at the farm, the kids waited on the porch, all three in their victory shirts, homemade with permanent marker, Hale Farm Heroes. Grace had made a crown out of cardboard and glitter glue. Samuel held a sign that read Free Lemonade for Champions. Ellie, grinning, waved 2 American flags she'd found in the garage. As Jordan stepped out of the truck, all three ran at him. He caught them in one sweep of arms and laughter and kisses. You won, Ellie squealed. No, he said, voice cracking. We won. Maya stepped out, watching them with soft eyes. She didn't rush to join, just watched. Let him have that moment. Let the man who had once walked away stand strong in the place he built back with his own hands. He looked up at her and mouthed, Thank you. She mouthed back, Welcome home. That evening, as the sun dipped low and bathed the cotton fields in gold, they gathered by the fire pit. The neighbors had come, bearing dishes of macaroni salad, peach pies, smoked ribs, and cornbread. Pastor Harlan said grace, his voice breaking at the line, and bless the hands that refused to let go. Later, Grace stood on the picnic table, crown slightly askew, and read a speech from her pink notebook. We didn't fight for money. We fought for memories, and lemonade, and pigs with funny names. We fought for stories, because our stories matter. She held up her arms like a general. And we won. The crowd laughed and clapped. Someone started singing, This land is your land, and soon the whole field was echoing with it, voices old and young rising into the sky. Jordan stood with Maya, his arm around her shoulder. We did it, he said. No, she replied, resting her head against him. We're just getting started. He kissed the side of her head and closed his eyes. The wind rustled the trees. The soil, for the first time in years, felt at peace beneath his feet. And above all else, the legacy they'd almost lost now pulsed stronger than ever, alive in laughter, in love, in land, and in a truth no court could ever erase. Sometimes, the fiercest battles are not fought with fists or weapons, but with truth, love, and the refusal to be erased. This story reminds us that land is more than soil. It holds memory, identity, and generations of sacrifice. Justice may be delayed, but when ordinary people stand together against greed, even giants can fall. In the end, the most powerful legacy we leave behind is not wealth, but the courage to protect what's rightfully ours and the love we pass on through family, community, and unshakable roots.